Hello everyone, welcome to our Art of Nursing webinar. It's 1 o'clock on Wednesday the 16th of July, just to make sure you're in the right time and the right place. This is the Art of Nursing Creativity, Resistance, Renewal fireside chat with artists, activists and nurses to give a sense of what's going on in the exhibition at the RCN, but also beyond that as well. So we've got nearly 30 people who have joined already. I'm just going to give a few more seconds so that they can come on who haven't come in. It's great to see this many people joining us already. As soon as my clock ticks to, there we go, 13:01, Telema Nurse. So my name is Marion Lynch. I am the convener of the Art of Nursing webinars. I'm a member of the RCN. I'm not employed by the RCN. This is my passion. Where is the art of nursing and how are the arts used in health and in nursing to ensure that the work that we do is seen and heard, and we feel that the invisible skills that we have can be kept. And in the NHS document that's just come out, Fit for the Future, kind of was searching for nurse and I was searching for art, and I found loads of references to artificial, but very few to the aspect of the arts and nothing about the art of nursing. So it's important that we keep the human element going, and that's what this is about. So we have 4 speakers today, each taking 8 to 10 minutes, kind of a fireside chat. There's a few slides, but the slides are the pictures, not words. And the event is recorded and then up on the RCN YouTube channel. So if you're not able to watch and see the pictures, you can look at the YouTube channel in about a week's time and see all of the information. And if you want to know more about the exhibition, we'll be hearing about that at the very end. And if you want to know about the next Art of Nursing webinars, we run them every other month. You'll hear that at the end as well. So why are we doing creativity and renewal and resistance in nursing? Well, I've been doing this because I feel a bit invisible and I feel a bit erased. And I've been a nurse. It was 1982 I started training, and I've been going on about the invisibility of skills, how we create sympathetic presence, but that can't be put into a competency framework. And where are the women leaders in nursing? How come the leaders look like they do for decades? And policy, I was a national nurse director, and policy and politics didn't get it through. So I've now come back to my heart, which is the arts. I linked with Kate Ford when we were discussing this, and the exhibition was to be born, and what stories we could put to create it. So this exhibition you'll hear about has been birthed from the creativity of nurses, the college's activism, and the artistic skills from all of those who are involved. And I hope as nurses and all are listening, you'll actually start to connect with what it is to be human and what it is to be a nurse through this work. So with that in mind, our first speaker is Kate Ford. Like I say, I met Kate at exhibitions outside of the RCN, and we've spoken a lot about how you curate a story in a way that actually connects to humans' emotions. So Kate, over to you.
Thanks, Marion, for that lovely introduction. And thanks so much to you all for joining us at this event today, to the RCN Museum team for organising it, and of course to Marion and the Foundation of Nursing Studies. It's a pleasure to be in the company of such brilliant speakers and contributors to the exhibition, The Art of Nursing. And I have to say the entire experience of curating this show has been a delight, because it's given me the opportunity to meet with so many inspiring individuals, artists, nurses, activists, curators, historians, researchers, others, all of whom have shared their time and perspectives so generously. Anyway, it's all given me a great deal to think about, and I have to say a lot of hope for the future in terms of the way in which art is currently being integrated into both the teaching and the practice of nursing, but also how it might come to play an even greater role in the profession moving forward. So what I'm going to do today is just share a few thoughts on the context and relevance of the exhibition. And I think, Antonia, you've kindly got a few slides. I really appreciate the fireside chat nature of these sessions, but I am going to show a few images because my expertise is very much limited to the visual and material culture of nursing. So I hope you will bear with me. Thank you. I've been asked about the context and the title of the exhibition, so I'll start by saying there was already a working title in place when I joined the project at the end of last year, The Art of Nursing. I felt that the show and the subtitle, Creativity, Resistance, Renewal, really needed to firmly situate both the historic works that we're displaying and the contemporary artworks in the current context, in terms of the current crisis in nursing, the cumulative impact of so many years of underfunding, the nurses' strike, the tremendous implications of COVID. And of course, I also wanted to think about this exhibition in terms of the very specific context of the Royal College itself, and the little that I have gleaned about its fascinating and complex history. Second slide, please. So I was very much inspired by the RCN's ongoing struggle for professional recognition, for genuine visibility, as embodied in this beautiful poster design from 1926. And so I was thinking about imagery like this, and then also the kind of imagery that was proliferating during COVID. Next slide, please. And I wanted to try to make sense of these images. How are they connected? How has art helped us to shape society's beliefs, expectations, attitudes towards nursing? And how have artists defined and then resisted the kind of conventional narratives around who nurses are and what they do? And then next slide, please. I also needed to think about how nurses themselves have integrated art into their own work, into their daily lives, into their own practice. How have they used art to help them and indeed us make sense of experience? So creativity, resistance, renewal. And next slide, please. On the subject of resistance, "We refuse to cope" is the message written on a couple of small tin badges that were first shown to me by Jane Salvage and Pam Smith, who, as many of you will know, are leading British nursing policy activists who first came to prominence in the 1980s. And I have to say, I laughed out loud when I saw these badges. I thought they were such a perfect kind of collective expression of anger and a perfect riposte to the kind of hundreds of images I was coming across in the early stages of research that perpetuated this idea of a nursing workforce that was idealised, perfect, feminine, silent. So next slide, please. The badges were actually produced by the Radical Nurses group in the 80s. Again, some of you will know this group fought hard to improve their profession and their patients' lives. They promoted direct action, rallies and work-ins, including the occupation of hospitals across London at a time of severe economic recession and political division. And I think their message sounds just as urgent today as it did half a century ago. And as a curator, it's tremendously exciting to come across material like this. I have to say, I should say this material, a great deal of it is in the archives of the RCN in Edinburgh. And I think it has a very clear, it sets up a very clear challenge in terms of conventional perceptions of nurses as silent, respectable, apolitical. And this kind of thing was really helping me to understand how all too often nurses are expected to lose themselves in the needs of their patients, to fade literally into the background. So one of the primary and I guess the most fundamental intentions of this exhibition is to place nurses firmly in the centre of the frame, to present art about them and by them. And so I wanted the exhibition's emphasis to be firmly on nurses' own self-determination and authority. Next slide, please. At the same time, the exhibition had to acknowledge the ways in which nursing has been so heavily mythologized, and how nurses have historically been represented, often as saints, angels, and heroes, usually as female, predominantly as white. I'm only going to mention a couple of examples here, but there's a huge amount of fascinating and fascinatingly problematic imagery and a much longer history of nursing that needs to be told. The focus of this exhibition is very much on modern nursing, I guess, from mid-19th century onwards. Anyway, this drawing is a kind of classic example of the way in which the image of the nurse is mobilized during periods of crisis, often during wartime, how she, because it invariably is she, is styled as a symbol of patriotic humanity against enemy brutality. It's drawn by the Dutch painter and caricaturist Louis Raymakers, who was very influential in terms of producing Allied propaganda during World War I. And this is thought to be a commemoration of a torpedo attack on a hospital ship off Lundy Island, which killed 160 people, including 2 early RCN members. Next slide, please. You can't really discuss the history of nurses in art without making some reference to the iconography of Nightingale and thinking about the way in which her image was and still is so effectively deployed, and how that styling of Nightingale as an emblem of compassion and care was both integral to the emergence of the profession, but also deliberately disconnected from a kind of radical political strategic leadership. Next slide, please. Thirdly, the exhibition considers the role of art in helping to construct and also resist these more conventional portrayals. And it pays particular tribute to those artists, some of them here today, who have made visible the complexity, labour and expertise of nursing, perhaps the most artful of professions. And this is a photographic work by the artist Joy Gregory, who made a series of portraits entitled Love of a Long Vocation. She was very interested in connecting with people across Imperial College Healthcare Trust who'd worked in the trust for over 10 years. So this idea of institutional memory and representing an institution, who gets to represent an institution. And the reason I selected this particular image for the show is because I think it really represents the kind of mutual respect, solidarity, lifelong friendship of 2 nurses. Often what you find in the more heroic representations is a solitary figure. You know, you get this figure that's disassociated from their context, from their labour, from their colleagues, and not this idea of collective power. Next slide, please. Another example of this would be the work of Caroline Walker, an artist whose painting focuses on the often hidden realities of women's everyday working lives. And these 2 sketches are from a residency that Walker conducted at UCLH Maternity Wing. Again, they're from a larger series of paintings and sketches that I urge you to look up. Walker has a solo show on at the moment at the Hepworth in Wakefield, if anyone is near there, which I highly recommend. And I really like the intimacy of these portraits and their focus on the administrative burden of nursing, and the kind of the data of nursing, not just the kind of grand moments in theatre or the dramatic moments that happen on a ward, for example. And finally, third slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. It's a work by the artist and scrub nurse, Ji-sun Sjogren. This is a page from one of her working sketchbooks that we're showing in the exhibition. Sjogren makes all her work from memory, and this is typical of her meticulous and hyper-real style. I think these drawings are really remarkable, and she's very interesting on the subject of how they help her to process the intensities of the work that she's doing in theatre, and really sharpen her powers of observation. Sjogren is one of a handful of nurses I was privileged to meet during the process of putting the show together, and we're going to hear from another of them in a moment, another outstanding contributor in a moment. Next slide, please. So that is a kind of whistle-stop tour, and I hope it's given you a bit of a glimpse into the range of material displayed in the Art of Nursing exhibition on now at the RCN in London. I urge you to come if you can, or to explore the online gallery that's been beautifully put together for the show, because unfortunately I can't do justice really to the artists that I've only had a moment to kind of briefly introduce to you today, and I think they all deserve an awful lot more time and attention. But what I hope I've shown is that I think there is real value in putting these kind of artworks and objects out into the public domain, and that the stories they tell can really help enrich our understanding of who nurses are, what nursing work entails, and how that work is valued. And this final slide is from Peter Livisige's sign paintings commission, which has resulted in hundreds of sign paintings made in collaboration with RCN members, many of which are on display in the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. And I already feel seen as a nurse now, both in the sort of drowning in that element, but also the power in the posters, in the sort of statements. I love the "don't carry it all" kind of message as well. You know, don't cope, because we need to stop absorbing everyone else's stuff. The nurse will do it. I think I should have that on my gravestone, really. The nurse did it all. Look, it's not helpful. And that's why we have resistance in the art. Like I say to everybody, this is a fireside chat, so it really is a zooming through on Zoom of the stories from the people who are telling the stories about the stories of others. So you won't get any in depth. That's why you have to look further and look deeper and be curious. So I'm going to move us on straight away to Freya, who is one of the contributors to this. Freya, tell us more about what you were doing.
Hello, thank you so much, Marion, and thank you everyone for including me in this chat. Can you hear me? Yeah, great. So my name's Freya Bentley. I'm the Culture and Community Manager for the Fitzrovia Chapel, which is just up the road from the Royal College of Nursing's premises in London, in Fitzrovia, obviously. And it's the former chapel to the Middlesex Hospital, which was a much beloved teaching hospital with an impressive and well-respected nursing school attached to it. And the hospital stood on that site between 1757 and 2006, when it was very sadly sold by the NHS and demolished. But thankfully the chapel remains. It's a Victorian neo-Gothic building, if you haven't been there. It was built in 1891 in the Byzantine style, and it's incredibly beautiful. It's got hundreds of mosaic stars on the ceiling and over 40 different types of marble in the building. Very, very thankfully, it's grade 2 star listed, and we're now a charity that looks after it, and we run it as an arts venue. It's open to all, it's deconsecrated, and we now have lots of opportunities to come and visit and learn about our history, regular public open days, and our own programme of exhibitions and events that often delve into the history of the building, the history of the hospital, the Middlesex, and healthcare in general, as well as other themes as well. We love to shine a light on kind of themes of healthcare at the chapel. But please do check out our website, social media, and sign up to our mailing list if you'd like to hear more about our programme. But today, I wanted to talk to you in particular about an exhibition that I co-curated last year with Dr. Jo Horton, called "In Uniform: Stories of Nurses and Their Clothing." I'm really thrilled that it got to feature in the fabulous Art of Nursing exhibition. So thank you so much, Kate and Sarah and Kai and everyone at the RCN for involving us. We're really thrilled. Really, I just want to talk about kind of, as Marion said, not to go into too much detail, but the reasoning behind the exhibition, and why I wanted to put it on. Yeah, so for me, one of the greatest joys, I guess, of working at the chapel is that even though it is a heritage building, it's also a site of living history and living memory. So really what I mean by that is that many nurses who trained or worked at the Middlesex Hospital come back to visit us. Really, it's quite unlikely that if you're in the Middlesex in the chapel when it's open, that there won't be a Middlesex nurse there. Yeah, they're often basically coming back, visiting us. They often have reunions with their, 50th, 40th, 60th anniversary of qualifying with their cohort. Sometimes for memorials or just off the cuff visits. As I said, it's very well located for a kind of stopping by after going shopping, just like the Royal College of Nursing. But yeah, they're kind of they're always coming back for those visits. And sometimes, they trained here as early as the 1940s. And their heads, when they come in, are just full of amazing stories. And as they walk around the chapel and look at our memorial plaques that we've got, or the information that we have on display, it's more and more kind of memories that are coming out of their mouths. And sometimes they write them in our memory book, which we encourage, but more often they're kind of just spilling out of them, really. And because of the amazing acoustics in the chapel with its vaulted ceilings, they're literally bouncing around the walls of the chapel. And I really, having worked there for a little while, I really thought it was important for us to somehow crystallize these memories in a way that allows us to translate them visually for the public to see and to learn about. And I noticed that stories about uniforms were very common within that. So I don't know if it's because of the age of the nurses, or that when they were training at the hospital, clothing was just something that was important to their progression throughout their training. But what surprised me initially was that it wasn't just about the kind of specifics of what they were wearing, but how stories that kind of revealed a kind of human perspective on the act of wearing a uniform. There were stories that were revealing so much about the individuals that were wearing them and how they were working. So just to give you a couple of examples, a couple of my favorites around the nurses' capes, which many of you will, I'm sure, know about. So I think the Middlesex Hospital nurses' capes were quite typical. They were navy felt on the outside, and they were lined with a bright red. But lots of nurses told us the stories of working on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, obviously not necessarily when they want to be working or when patients want to be in hospital, but that they would turn their capes inside out when going around the wards so that the red was showing. And I just love that example because I think it's kind of just a brilliant demonstrator of the complex ways that nurses use joy and creativity and laughter and humor to care for their patients, not just kind of through the medical care. And another example, which is more kind of about the connections between nurses as kind of colleagues. One told me that they had to, or they didn't have to, but they chose to chain stitch their names into the inside of their capes. And one in particular said that she was taught by her friend and fellow nurse how to chain stitch, and that friend then went on to be a bridesmaid at her wedding, and they were still friends some 40 years later. So that was my two favorite memories that I wanted to share. But yeah, there's many more that we tried to tell in the exhibition. But yeah, I wanted to really center our exhibition, center those stories of the nurses in our exhibition, so that it wasn't just about the uniforms that they were wearing, but the nurses that were wearing them. And the wonderful Charlotte explained how she amazingly helped me do that with the design of her mannequins, which are on display in the Art of Nursing exhibition at the RCN. And then, yeah, just before I finish, I wanted to say thank you so much to the Royal College of Nursing team for your help with the exhibition. I think I met with Sarah about a year before it actually went on display, and just from then she was so helpful, pointed us in all the right directions, helped us look through the archive, the library collection, loaning us some beautiful objects and printed materials, and Kai as well for, you know, helping us with the loans and the kind of conservational side of things. Yeah, you're all just fabulous to work with. So thank you. You're a great resource. And I hope people kind of are aware just how brilliant you are.
Oh, Freya, you know, thank you. And you know, when you speak of that uniform, I can remember being fitted for my uniform. It's July 1982, and I still remember they got the numbers wrong, and my uniform mixed me up with the shorter nurse next to me. I'm very tall, and forever my uniform was too short, and I was always being told off as if I put it up myself. And it was the 80s, and we still had hats, but there was a ritual with it of the buckles and the badges and everything, that was helpful in some ways, and not helpful in other ways. But that identity bit that came from your status before scrubs really resonates. So I'm very excited to see this and to hear more then from Charlotte about what it actually looks like, because I'm already trying to metaphorically pull my skirt down. Tell us more.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. When Freya invited me to take part in the amazing exhibition that's at the Fitzrovia Chapel, it was such a lovely moment, because it kind of brought together two aspects of my practice so perfectly. So I've done a lot of work in healthcare contexts, and most of my work is sort of wall drawings, really massive murals, often in hospitals, and everything I do is life-sized, because the sort of embodied response to the work is the area I'm interested in. I was doing a lot of work on the role of home in the hospital, but then I trained as a fashion designer, and actually before I ended up being the artist I am now, I worked making clothing, and my thesis when I was doing my degree was on uniform. And just chatting to Freya about the kind of challenge of putting on this exhibition, my first thought was, she was asking initially about advice about how to sort of set about doing this, and I think we must have the individual human presence of unique human beings being the way that we experience these uniforms, because anything which was in the category of a mass-produced mannequin would feel so inappropriate for the subject, and the subtlety of this relationship between individual human beings whose personal intuitive humanity is absolutely kind of at the fore of doing their job well, the stuff that you can't even put into words, but you just your instincts and their sort of embodied wisdom that can be amplified through wise training, and it's so precious, and that type of humanity is so such an important subject at the moment, because of the role of technology and AI being so kind of in the spotlight at the moment. And so my thought was that we have to make each mannequin be a unique sculpture of an individual person. That's the way to do it. And then and I was actually working on a project at Highgate Mental Health Centre while I sort of took time out from that project to make this work for Freya. And so I was, all the time when I wasn't in my studio making these sculptures, I was working in a hospital talking to nurses and occupational therapists and play workers and everyone involved in making, you know, the environment that cared for people there. And so this sort of, it just felt like a joy to be given this job, which was combining these two things that I've kind of always been interested in. To be able to have a big range of bodies in that room, so that when you walk into the chapel, you weren't immediately struck by, oh, here's some uniforms, they must have been worn by people. I wanted you to walk into the room and just feel the humanity and the variety of humanity first, and then the uniform in relation to that person, because Freya's stories are so pertinent. That combination of the uniform, which is something which is employed to create sort of similarities across a group and to help people to say, I know what your job is, or what, you know, it's a fascinating subject, uniform. I think they can be wonderful things, but the subtleties of the way each person wore their uniform and each person's physical relationship to the uniform, you know, the as you know, how throughout the fashion changes, you know, whether things are fitted, what type of fabrics used, whether something's there's, you know, an elasticated aspect to it, or whether things would have to be, you know, you'd have to be measured up, and it would have to, you know, if it's a wool suit, it really has to fit you and be yeah, you know, sort of more made to measure than the more modern uniforms. And so it's just it's a really thought-provoking, pertinent subject. I mean, I'd be happy to take questions about how it's hard to know what to talk about. I could explain.
Thank you. I'm going to keep the questions till the end, because I don't want to take away Bernice's time, and I want to talk about the Zoe Take a Break portrait as well. That's in here, but there's in the chat already. There's I've smiled twice with the messaging about the imagery that comes from a nurse's uniform, and when it's sexualized and when it really isn't. A green tabard, sorry, you know, green tabard, oh dear. As for Project 2000, we all remember when our identity was accentuated in a way that helps or hinders our identity as a nurse, and when it was scrubbed out. And the tabard, I remember, yes, the tabard that or the plastic apron that obscured your badge and your personality, everything you did as well. So we'll keep questions to the end, Charlotte, because I want Beatrice, sorry, I keep saying Beatrice, to share what you've been doing here, so that it can augment this as well. Hello, Beatrice.
Hi, Marian. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Beatrice Obekulu, and I am can you hear me okay? And I'm a registered nurse from Exeter. And today I'm really honored to be speaking to you about my art piece, which is titled Detangling History in Nursing. So Detangling History in Nursing was a piece that I created as part of the Art and History of Nursing module during my degree at the University of Exeter. And this piece focuses on hair discrimination and racism within the nursing profession, and also, you know, its impact whilst using words that are peculiar to the Afro hair, such as detangling, which is an important aspect in the care of the Afro hair. My piece was inspired by personal experiences as a Black woman working in healthcare, and also my observations during clinical placements and also researched evidence. This piece aims to not only educate, but also to change the misconceptions regarding the Afro hair, as you know, it's often viewed as unprofessional or unkept. And I think it's very important that these misconceptions are, you know, addressed, as hair is one of the major aspects of the African culture and identity that tells our story, you know, showcases our struggles and also celebrates our history. So hopefully the picture is up, but my artwork features two portraits, one of the 19th century nurse and the other of the 21st century nurse, both proudly wearing their natural hair. So the 19th century nurse represents a period in nursing history, as well as, the misconceptions about the Afro hair. And using the 19th century nurse to demonstrate these misconceptions indicates that the use of these words are archaic and basically unacceptable. And we've got the 21st century nurse, which is aimed to, so I basically created the 21st century nurse to celebrate the Afro hair, by using affirmative words that genuinely represents what the Afro hair stands for, because, the Afro hair is beautiful, the Afro hair is professional, it's versatile, and it serves as our crown and our identity. And using the modern nurse to celebrate the Afro hair also represents the beginning of a new dawn and the abolition of archaic beliefs and discriminatory practices faced by nurses from African and Caribbean backgrounds, which also surprised you that is still ongoing even up until today. So prior to creating this piece, I had zero experience in painting or creating art. And honestly, I didn't even think art was something that I was really interested in. But for the modular exhibition, I knew that I wanted to create something that spoke loudly about inclusion and diversity in nursing. And through the support I received from my lecturers, my family, my friends, and other art inspirations, I was able to discover a new way to advocate and express myself through this piece. So addressing hair discrimination in nursing provided me with an insight into the lack of recognition of hair discrimination as a form of racism, particularly in hospital trusts that are not entirely diverse, and also the establishment of policies that intentionally discriminate and encourage racist practices. So just to wrap up, detangling history in nursing isn't just, an art piece. It's also a medium for advocacy and to also educate nurses from other, backgrounds about the history and representation of the Afro hair, which can help, increase awareness of cultural needs. And so basically the aim is to have, a profession, obviously nursing, where people are accepted, and their culture and being, are also respected as well, regardless of their race, skin color, or hair type. So thank you.
Thank you. And this was part of your nurse training, yeah?
Yes, so I created it as part of a modular assessment during my degree at the University of Exeter.
So here we have an example of how the arts are being introduced into the curriculum, and then the challenges to thoughts and to our ways of practice are being made visible in ways that a textbook cannot say. What does a nurse look like? We started with the saintly white skinny nurse being drowned by a skeleton, and that saints and sort of nuns kind of image, which has never, as Kate said, has never helped anyone. And Beatrice has shown us that the discrimination, the racism within nurses even goes to how we show our hair, how we create our individuality, how we manage ourselves under the hat. I remember, hair off the collar, and I had loads of 1980s hair, and but it was manageable under a hat. It's completely unmanageable without a hat. So this element of what nurses look like and what nurses do, shown through the arts, is what we're trying to do here. And beyond that, what now in the wider world should nurses be portrayed as looking like, and what should we be defining what we do? So let me take you to a portrait now. Can I have my slide, please, of Zoe? So I'm a registered nurse, I'm a public health specialist, and I'm an artist and an author. And my mission in life is to get female nurses seen, heard, and influential. And I'm using the arts to do this. So I start with Zoe, Take a Break. This is not my work. This is Zoe, who is a nurse at Whittington Hospital. And this is created by her sister, who is an artist, Maisie, her twin sister. And when you look at it, you might think, well, what on earth's going on here? what age is this in? What's she looking at? What is, what's wrong with her? As nurses who have looked at this, we've said, is that cup full of cold black coffee? And I think it is full of cold black coffee, because when I look at this, I sometimes think, this is me. So I got put back into Scrubs and was called into the Nightingale in London to be an educator, because that's what I can do during COVID. And every nurse said to me, thousands of people coming through to be trained. We trained 5,000 people to do caring. But in the whole world, people just kept saying, nurses kept saying, I'm fine, I'm fine. But some of them were fine, some really weren't. And there was something about using art to go beyond the statement of coping, just like the badge says, to actually be able to, vicarious, I'm a mental health nurse as well, vicarious saying, I say I'm fine, but if I take a moment, I need to know what actually I am. And we use this picture, Zoe, take a break, to enable nurses to use the art to reflect and manage conversations about their well-being. We would talk about what is Zoe doing. So if you can see it, or you look at the recording later, what's she looking at out there? Who's on the phone to her? What's within the books that surround her? And this is all placed like the old Dutch masters paintings. That cap is a kind of scrub cap for COVID, but really resonates with the old, sort of girl with a pearl earring kind of imagery, which is what we were trying to bring with this way of telling a story with art. And each time we take about 15 minutes of art, slow looking at this painting, to then for people to start crying. And I'm nearly crying saying it, because people would say, actually, this is me. And I hadn't seen my family for weeks. And I was just trying to check that my mum was okay on the phone. And that is a cold cup of coffee, but I'm just holding it because I need to hold it. And I was looking in the books, but there wasn't an answer. And this story came each time from this picture that then made me think this picture needs to go elsewhere as well. So fortunately, I was running a Global Health 50/50 art exhibition, and that brought images about gender inequality from across the world. This picture is now in the Global Health 50/50 Gates-funded foundation report on gender inequality in the workplace for the world. And the people who then read the statistics said the pictures spoke the story. It brought it to life. So this is page 21. And Zoe now resides in the Foundation of Nursing Studies office within the King's Fund on the wall, loaned by the charity Paintings in Hospitals, and features on our cards that we send to everybody. So for Christmas. And she is also part of the Global Health 50/50 online exhibition, 100 images about gender inequality, that just brings a moment to slow look and think about what's going on. And in relation to this as well, there's an educational package. It's on the Foundation of Nursing Studies website. It's called the I'm Fine package. And it was a collection of 10 pictures I brought together that then are there to enable people to either have a moment of slow looking for themselves, to take a moment, take a break, that's what this picture's called, or to use in restorative supervision, or to use in the curriculum or in teaching. And these are pictures that are not skinny nurses sitting on corridor slabs with mask marks on, because the most of us, we don't, oh my God, can you imagine sitting on the floor in a hospital? I'd have had my ponytail pulled up by a matron. No, we don't, that's not what we do, but nor do we cope. So these images are representative from across the world that can be used as a piece of art. There's also a load of text in it, nerd stuff about what is supervision, what is leadership, etc. So it's a resource for revalidation or recuperation or resistance to go, actually, one of the pictures is from a nurse training event on CPR, and it's from nurses who live and come from Africa, and the CPR mannequin is white. So there's just this dissonance that we go on about imagery and power in nursing as well. So there's resources out there, the exhibition and then ongoing, that'll just make you think a little bit about this. And that's what we want you to do. The educational theory is called slow looking, where you take a moment, take a breath, and you slow your dopamine and your cortisol and all of those things that actually enable you to then connect with yourself and with the image and what joins those two together. That's how the arts actually help. This is the amazing way that the arts help, and it is what the art of nursing is when a human connects to another human. So in my 13:59 minute, can I just thank Charlotte? We must be in touch about that. I can't remember the art word. Embodied participatory piece that I'm imagining. Freya, I'm going to come there because I need to stand in that chapel and feel it. Beatrice, please convince all student nurses and teachers that this is a useful way of learning, and not only learning about what nurses do, but how to be a nurse and how to value nurses, and how we undo the colonial thinking and the racism that has actually perpetuated some of our work. And Kate will be in touch about the next exhibition stuff, I'm sure.